In this episode of Rich in Relationship, why family business succession can be such a struggle. Every family I work with thinks business succession, it's like a financial decision. How do we transfer ownership? What's the tax impact? What's the cleanest way to structure this? And those are definitely important questions, but they are not the real challenge here, folks. Passing on a business from one generation to the next doesn't break down because of numbers. It breaks down because of what those numbers represent. Even more important, what the business represents to the generation letting go and the generation stepping up. I work with families who have built something meaningful, real businesses, real assets, real legacy. And when it's time to think about passing that on, the conversation almost always starts in the wrong place. It starts with the numbers, the deal, which is almost a misnomer in families. What gets missed is everything that's underneath what's going on with the business, because before succession is ever financial, it is emotional. On the surface, it looks like a planning conversation. Equity splits, roles in the future, timelines, control. But very quickly this shifts because all of a sudden there's tension. All of a sudden there's hesitation on one side or the other. And now it's a conversation that feels heavier than it should, right? Because we're talking about one generation that created a business to support the next generation, passing it on to that next generation so that the dream can continue. But somehow the conversation gets bogged down. Somehow it gets heavier and people don't always know why. They just feel it. A parent starts second guessing. Maybe they're not really ready for this. Maybe that's what's going on. And the next generation, they've been feeling like, do they actually trust me? Well, when it gets heavier, they really start to wonder. And no one says it directly, so the conversation stays on the surface. They keep talking about the structure. They keep talking about the terms. They keep talking about the numbers. Or maybe they get to an agreement and they start to live it, but they don't live it. The parent won't let go. The parent still hangs in there, meddling with it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. And it's because succession isn't just about the assets. It's about the identity of the business. It's about the identity of the parents who created the business. They have their identity wrapped up in it. A business is passed on from one generation to the next. Guess what? That identity is going to change no matter what. It is not enough to say it's a family business, because that isn't what gives it the identity. That it's the identity of the leader that gives the business its personal flavor, let's call it. Oh, the identity of what it has been influences what it becomes. But I think the hardest part for the parents is letting go and allowing it to change. For the parents, it's not just business. It isn't just ownership. It's years of work. It's the risks they took. It's the sacrifices they made. It's the pride they have in what they built. And let's not forget the magic ingredient, letting go of control. And letting go does not feel like a transaction. It feels like losing something. Even when you know it's the right move, even when you know it's what you built the business for. I worked with a family recently, and on paper, everything looked clean. They had planned this out years ago. The plan was solid. The structure made sense. The numbers worked. But every time they tried to move forward, it stalled. Our meetings got pushed out, the details got revisited, sometimes revised, and nothing actually materialized. From the outside, it looked like it was being overthought, but that's not what it was. The parent wasn't holding up the deal because of the deal. They were struggling with what it meant to step back, what it meant to let go, what it meant to see their dream start to change. And let's be honest, some of the problem for the parent also was they hadn't really thought through what the next phase of their life was, right? You can't let go of your baby and becoming a business empty nester if you don't know what the next phase is going to be. The parent was wondering, who am I if I'm not the one running this? What happens if they do it differently? Inevitably they will. What happens, oh my God, if they fail and the business starts to go down? Even though the parent went through the same experience, even though they had moments that felt like failure where they learned, grew, and expanded the business, what if their kid went through the same thing? And part of this is because as parents, we don't want our kids to struggle the way we did. We want to make it easier for them. On the other side, the next generation, they felt it. Even though it wasn't spoken, they sensed their parents' hesitation. Kids always have an idea of what their parents are feeling at any age. They sense the lack of full trust and the not so invisible not yet that was going on, because this went on for a while. And so they started to hold back also. Oh, they don't trust me. They're not really willing to put it in my hands. Well, maybe I shouldn't give it 100%. They took less ownership. They took less initiative. There was more waiting. When a crisis would happen, even though the parent technically was stepping back, the child wouldn't step up. And finally, almost too late, they'd respond. And they would lose opportunities as a result. Both the parents and the kids were stuck, not because they had a bad plan, but because emotionally, they hadn't really stepped into that plan yet. They hadn't really addressed it. They hadn't really thought about, felt their way through it. Another family, different version of the same problem. The next generation was ready. They were capable, motivated. They were already contributing. They were already pushing and driving forward. But every time they tried to step into more responsibility, it created friction. Why? The parents weren't ready. Their decisions got questioned. Their authority got undercut. And conversations were just a little tense, to say the least. The conversations might backslide even into conversations they had in adolescence, even though these were grown-ass men and women, as they like to say to their parents. The vibe was still adolescent. There was a sense on the parents' part that the kids were rebelling when really they were trying to step up. Now, from the outside, this looked like a battle for control, but underneath it, there was fear. There was anxiety. There was a fear of letting go. There was a fear on the parents' part of losing relevance. There was a fear of watching something that they built change. And again, none of that was being talked about. It showed up as resistance. This is what happens when succession is treated as a financial process, as a business plan only. You can build the perfect structure. You can have the cleanest plan, but if the emotional transition isn't happening alongside it, if you haven't done a good job of separating what's my mission and vision for myself when I leave this, or what's my mission and vision for my family separate from my new mission and vision for this business as I step into it, if you haven't thought those things through, if you haven't worked on your family charter, is what we call it, just to make it distinct from the mission and vision of the business, the plan's not going to hold. It's not going to work. There's going to be a part of you is always going to be invested in what was, because you don't know what will be. People don't execute cleanly inside of something they're not emotionally aligned with. Or another way we like to say this is, you have to be willing to let go of something in order to step into something new. And this is why so many succession plans either stall or quietly fall apart. Not because the numbers were wrong, but because people weren't ready. The humans weren't ready. So here's the shift. Stop starting with the deal. Start with the people. Before you talk about ownership, get clear on, what does stepping back actually mean for the people stepping back? And what, if you're the parent, what are you holding on to that you haven't said out loud? And what does trust really look like in this next phase? And for the next generation, like I said before, make sure your wife and children family are separate from your siblings' dad family and the business. Make sure you have a charter for that family. And once you have that clarity in the business, what responsibility are you actually ready to own? What do you still need to grow into this place? And it's not fill your parents' shoes. It's really, what are your shoes going to look like when they take the place of your parents' shoes? And how are you showing that you're ready, not just saying it? How are you demonstrating it? These are not easy conversations, but they are necessary ones, because when the emotional side is addressed, the financial side becomes much simpler. Clarity shows up faster, decisions move more cleanly, and trust starts to build in a real way. But if you skip that part, you'll keep coming back to the same sticking points, different numbers, same tension. Here's the part most people don't want to hear. You can plan, think, and engineer your way through a succession plan, but it's not going to go very far if you haven't worked through what it means to let go. It isn't just a transfer of assets. It's a transition of roles, identity, and trust. It's a transformation over time of the identity of the business itself. And until that's clear, nothing else really moves. So if your succession conversations feel heavier than they should, don't start with the structure. Start with what's underneath it. That's where everything changes.